Hey everybody, Esports John here. Today we're going to be casting a game between Larva and Flash during a series of games that they played on stream a couple days ago. This is from June the 13th, and I believe Larva has a lead in the series right now. So we'll just have to see how he rolls with that. This is, they've played a bunch of games on Circuit Breaker, so inevitably it's probably going to end in Larva raging super hard, but at least until that point, I think it's going to be really good. Right now, Larva is probably the best ZVTer out there, honestly. Even though he never really prepares and does very well on stage. On stream, he's just an absolute beast. His mechanics are on point, and he really knows what to do in this matchup compared to a lot of other Zerg players. A lot of other Zerg players like Jaedong, for instance, seem very lost in this matchup. Players like Effort play very aggressively, which has like a 50-50 chance of working, but Larva he seems to know exactly where the line goes, and I think it's largely because he just practices against Flash and Last non-stop, even while he's raging super hard, so he knows every finite detail of this matchup. So you see a pretty standard 12 hatch coming up from Larva. This is not surprising. This is against somebody like Flash, who can deflect pretty much anything in the game. Like, it just doesn't make sense to go for any sort of an aggressive play early on. It makes a lot more sense to just go for that macro game and work from there. You're not gonna catch Flash off guard with a cheese. Oh god, this message again. There was a message like this earlier in one of his games, and it just lasts forever, and it's really annoying. Just lowering that quite a bit. So we see the first drone scout coming out, and the hatch is already down. It looks like he is not going to be going for the fast gas quite yet. Like, we're probably going to see the triple hatch. Oh, he's angry. It's probably just as annoying to him to hear that as well, so not surprised to hear him yell about that. We're going to see the triple hatch coming out soon. He sees the scouting SCV, so he's going to know he's probably either in cross spawns or it's in the bottom right. I'm not 100% sure of scout timings. I feel like that's a pretty late SCV scout. As far as standard SCV scouts go, maybe send out 2 SCVs. We see the triple hatch coming out and the gas going down now. Overlord's going to be safe hiding on this ridge, so not a big deal. Larva knows exactly where Flash is right now, so he can prepare accordingly. So I'm curious how many links he's going to start off with. This has been really, I think, the big difference between a lot of Zerg players until as of recent, because there's always this big distinction, like, do you go for only one set of Zerglings just to push back the SCV very slowly while you just macro up and hide behind an early sunken, or you go for the 4 lings, you get a little bit of scouting pressure, you can pick off like 1 or 2 Marines if they walk across the map and kill off the SCV. It makes it a lot easier to kill off the SCV. If you go for 6 lings, all of a sudden it's very aggressive, etc. So we did hear that he has a couple more lings on the way. That's good. This early Marine poke is becoming very standard for Terran players, and it seems like what Zerg players are preferring to respond to, or are referring to use against it these days, is just making 1 or 2 extra sets of lings, because it's so much easier to deal with that Marine poke with some extra lings. If you crush it, then all of a sudden you have complete map control, and the Terran really can't do anything for a little while. Versus putting down a sunken, you do injure your economy more or less about the same as making a lot of lings, but you also lose all of your map control that way as well. So Zerg players playing a little less greedy, playing a little bit more aggressively with these lings, and we'll have to see if it pays off for Larva in this game. So the SCV does get into his base. He is going to scout it. You already see the lair coming down. This isn't going to be a speed first build or anything crazy like that. Gonna be standard Mutalisk, it looks like. I love how Larva's doing all this stuff where he's just anytime there's a drone that's near that SCV, he picks it up and does a little bit of extra damage. Oh, the Ling slipped by here. This could do a little bit of damage in Flash's bases, but now he's already got things on the ramp. He's pretty good. Wait, did I misspeak again? Did he go Ling speed first? I really need to work on these timings. Yeah, it looks like this is the new Zerg build. All the Zergs are really liking going Ling speed before Lair. It allows them to be way more aggressive on the map. Or maybe that is normal timing. It feels weird. I don't know. I could be wrong. Anyhow. So, he is getting that Spire up. Mulus is going to come out soon. Looks like he's going to expand to the top left-hand corner. Obviously makes sense. You're going to cross positions from the Terran. And just scouting out the Marine count. This is very important to scout out the Marine count early on. Figure out how many barracks your opponent is going to end up going. Usually, you can't get much of an idea from the very first group. The first group basically just tells you, is my opponent going for like a fast tech build? But once they get past that first Marine medic group, depending on how fast they get the second ball, that tells you how many racks you're up against. So just scouting this out, just keeping an eye on the Terran army, making sure it doesn't move out without his permission. And the first Mulus are probably going to be started in just a second. Very suave move to go down instead of up the ramp. He's going to pick off 3 Marines for that many Lings. I'm not 100% sold on that because he just lost all of his map control. If you leave all of those Lings alive, you can start threatening run buys and things like that into the Terran after they move out with this initial force. It also makes it much easier to pick off this Marine medic force with your initial set of Mutalists. So, I don't really like that trade. It's not a great trade for Larva, but he's got his Mutalists out now, and he's going to be going into the main base to try to start getting damage in. But Flash, on top of his macro right now, already has the missile turrets out. He's already ready for this aggression. So I'm not sure where that initial Marine medic ball went. Flash may have turned around and sent that back home to defend. But he sees that there are the 5 racks. This is pretty standard from Flash. Probably has the +1 going as well. And so this is very hard to break with just Mutaling. This is something that you're going to need the lurkers out, and you're going to need a fast hive to deal with. But the main goal here is just to pick off as much Marine medic as possible. If you can pick off the Marine medic and keep that ball from ever hitting a critical mass, it's much, much easier to deal with in the long game. And it kind of diffuses that threat of the insane 5 racks pressure. Larva doing a pretty good job with his Mulus so far. He's just trying to find gaps to pick off some units and do a little bit of damage. Still hasn't taken this third. I wonder if he may try for the 12 o'clock third since his third base is so late here. But he's continuing to build Mutalists and Lings. It looks like he's going to be getting those lurkers out soon. Actually built a round of drones, which I find pretty interesting. To build a round of drones before you take your third base is a little bit unusual, but he is going to be able to clean up this force with this group of Lings. Just imagine if he had those extra, like, 10 Lings that he had earlier. It'd be so much easier to clean up that force. He probably could have cleaned up the entire thing, even that second bioball. But he does have the drone going over there now. I think for Flash, he's probably thinking, unless he scanned, I didn't see if he actually scanned, but unless he actually scanned, he's probably thinking the third base is already up. So he might be surprised at how late this actually is. First couple of lurkers are out right now. They're going to be coming across the map. And Larva's going to have to defend this entirely off of good Mutalist micro, and that's so difficult to do right now. But he's doing a pretty good job of it so far, so I'm a bit surprised. This is what I've been talking about, though. Larva just really on top of knowing exactly how to play this matchup and how to get the most out of his units. So even though it's just Mutalist against these Marines, it's so difficult for them to break up this ramp because he's using the high ground advantage. Good flank from the lurkers. I don't like that one of them got picked off immediately. That was a bit of an oversight. He lost track of that group of lings. That would have made that cleanup much easier. But he does clean it up eventually, and he is going to be able to take this third base with the lurker on the high ground. Got his Queen's Nest. He's got the Defiler Mound going down now. So he's going to have Defilers up to deal with this hopefully soon. I think we also saw the Nidus. That's the Nidus Canal there on the top with the natural there. So he rebuilt a lot of mutas. This is a little bit unusual. Usually you see Zerg players, once they get past that first group... Oh, losing a couple mutas. That's brutal. Usually you see when the Zerg player loses their first couple of mutas, they tend to mellow out and just switch entirely into Lurker Ling Defiler. But it's pretty interesting that Larva feels confident enough in his Mutalisk micro to continue playing this sort of style with the Mutalisks and the Lings. And it might not be a bad idea against 5 racks, I'm not entirely sure. It's still difficult to really gauge how to play against the 5 racks because it's so strong in so many ways, and it feels like it has no weaknesses sometimes. A very good job stacking lurkers on top of each other. It makes it so much harder to target them down and kill them, especially when you target a healthy lurker on top of a nearly dead lurker. It makes a big difference. They're gonna. The question now is, so he does have this high ground. Wow, Flash is actually gonna stem up here. That was ambitious from Flash. That was very ambitious. He does have the first science vessel over there, and we hear the Irradiate's already going down. But he is gonna be able to have some defilers and some lings over here on the high ground. Once he gets that Dark Swarm down, it's going to be impossible to actually break that. There's a couple of Scourge. He's just going to go in there and try to snipe it. Wow. Okay. Not even caring about anything. He's just going to try to snipe it. Very good catch on this SCV building the third. Or that's actually probably the fourth base, honestly. So very good stuff. That's going to slow down that base considerably. This is the danger that you run into, though, at this point in the game, is if the Terran just pushes both sides of the map, it becomes very difficult to break this. Oh, excellent play there with the Dark Swarm and the Lurkers. And he is going to be able to break down this ramp and start securing his fourth. Excuse me. So, he really needs to just throw down the next Dark Swarm anyway. That's going to be able to push that back. That's nice. Did he lose all of his? Oh, that was just like a random Mutalisk. Oh wow, he actually finds this base down in the bottom left-hand corner. That's a bit surprising. Runs into his lings into a couple of Marines. This is pretty brutal. So the real question is here, for the Zerg player, you really want to be able to get up these 4 bases and get up to that 4 gas. Once you get 4 gases, then it becomes much easier to deal with the Terran forces, and then you can start doing that slow tech into the Ultralisk. The Ultralisk, that's a very important piece of tech. Looks like Adrenal Glands is already finished. There is a little bit of pressure over here at the 4th with that scan, but he does have the Defiler there. He's gonna be alright. He picks off that base in the lower left-hand corner, so that's really good. So annoying to deal with. Whenever you have to deal with these stupid science vessels just coming in and irradiating all your units and then walking away. So very annoying, but that's why it's important to have the Scourge in place to deal with it. And I'm a little bit surprised that Flash hasn't tried any drop play right now. Drop play is honestly very strong, and when you know the Mutalisks are down there in the bottom left, you can very easily make a push over to that natural and drop in the main, or something similar on the opposite side of the map. And Larva doesn't have that many Scourge to deal with it at the moment. That was interesting. I'm not sure what this move out was meant to do. So it was a little confusing that he went out there with his Zerglings like that and just kind of lost them for free. Flash still isn't going into that mech style yet. It looks like he's trying to go for the SK Terran, but it's kind of difficult to do comfortably. Yeah, oh wow, that is so many science vessels. Holy crap. Oh my god, that was a beautiful plague. That just saved Larva's life. Larva would be 100% dead right now, if not for that amazing plague. Wow. That was a godsend. That's so many vessels, it's crazy. But right now, Terran still has map control, but while Larva can continue to macro up on these 4 bases, it's not really a big deal. All he has to do is just not die and sunken up and put down more and more of these lurkers, and he's in pretty good shape. Actually, he needs to pick up those lurkers at his 3rd base too. Else he's just gonna die. Yeah. Okay, good swarms to prevent this base from going down, and those sunkens are gonna hold strong. He needs to get a line of sunkens over to his 4th as well if he wants to survive any sort of frontal pushes like this in the future. I feel like those mutalisks honestly should be scouting out the bottom left yet again, because this is as the Terran player is pushing out like this, it becomes very difficult to actually maintain and hold your bases while still matching the Terran. So you really need that pressure out on the map. Very interesting to get the spore instead of the sunken, just to push back these science vessels. It's probably not a bad idea, honestly, considering how low they are. Looks like he's going to go for the plague. Not a great plague, but it's still really good against the medics because it runs them out of energy really, really fast. Yep. No, that's why that spore is good. That's exactly why it's good. And you see he's getting these mineral-only bases up. He's not going to rely on the like 4 base all-in. Very serendipitous timing with this drop play. He just happens to have all the right things in the right places, and immediately got that Dark Swarm down in his natural. So really nicely played from Larva to just handle this very nicely. He lost almost no drones in that exchange, and he's going to be able to pick off at least one of these dropships with the mutas, if not both. Looks like he's not going to get both. Oh, there's that medic. That was interesting. So is Flash switching into the mech yet? Or is he still just sticking to this heavy bio? That's what I'm curious about. Did stop the vessel production for a little while just to get up those couple of dropships. But it looks like he's going to be trying to prevent this 3rd base from actually going down. It's a little bit unfortunate that Defiler died before he was able to get off a swarm, but with Flash standing like all of his Marines underneath a storm, it really isn't a big deal. Sorry, swarm, not a storm. Swarm. Got it. And I feel like Ultras should be coming out pretty soon. He's been getting the Ultras upgrades. He doesn't have a lot of gas right now, but he can start adding on the Ultras 2 at a time pretty soon and just start to push this back. I guess the real issue is you can't bleed out too many Lurker Defiler, or else you run into the issue of just not having enough units. And wow, Flash already with that bunker down in the 6 o'clock position. He's definitely ready to deal with this. Okay, good. They're the first couple of Ultras. They're going to be able to start pushing this back. He really needed these Ultras a lot sooner, in my opinion. Another plague goes down. Where is the... why is... Okay, wow. So I was a bit confused. So Larva is actually sacrificing these 2 bases to go for a big push down in this bottom left-hand corner. This is actually, I think, really smart, especially since he has the Ultras out now. It's very easy for him to just go completely ham on this base. But Flash already in position with those science vessels. It's insane how well Flash is able to keep up with things. And meanwhile, Flash is going to be attacking up in this top left base as well, but that's not going to work out too well. And Larva's he's wasted a lot of resources to do this attack without actually getting anything done. So I'm not 100% convinced this was a great move, but he is going to be able to start establishing these bases at the very least. He's going to try to pick off as many of these science vessels as possible. It's very important to get the science vessel count down at this point in time. I'm surprised they didn't make a Mulalisk or 2 to deal with this instead of the Scourge, but okay, there's Mulalisk. I was wrong. He's going to be able to push back this force, so excellent play so far from Larva to get this pushed out and be able to get map control back. But the problem is, so this is a very rare moment where Terran's already started to switch into that medic. You see the couple of tanks. This is a little bit backwards from the way that Terran players normally go into mech. Usually Terran players will get those early those early vultures out and start laying spider mines all over the map. But instead, Flash is deciding to go straight into the siege tanks and just rely on having a big heavy army that he's going to be able to push across the map with a little bit later. Now, I think the proper way to deal with that is just immediately group all of your forces and just ram into that bottom left-hand base for the Terran player, because the biggest problem with going for this tank style instead of going for the vulture style is you don't have a lot of map control, so you can't stop these pushes across the map. And you see he's continually drawing Larva back over to this side where the super immobile tanks are. This is a little bit nice. He's going to be able to pick off at least 2 tanks, maybe 3. Yeah, very nice. Pick off those 3 tanks, but it's still not great for Larva right now. He really needs to be pushing across the map all the way down into that bottom left-hand corner and cut off the Terran supplies. And I think that's maybe what he meant to do with that earlier attack. He just messed it up slightly, so a little bit interesting the way he's done this. Continuing to thin out the vessel count, which is a very important part of playing Zerg. But he really needs to move out. He's got a ton of Ling Ultra, he just hasn't used it yet. But he needs to get a proper surround on all this. Good Darkstorm to start things out. He's actually just going to go straight into that 6 o'clock base with a gigantic force while just defending here with a fairly small force. This is a huge risk to do. He honestly could have just completely surrounded this army with Ling Ultra and crushed it, but instead he wanted to go for the counterattack and start cutting off the Terran supply. I don't think this is a very good move, honestly, because like unless you kill off all of those bases, which you're never going to be able to do with just Lurker Ultra, it's kind of pointless, honestly. So, a little bit of a questionable choice from Larva here. I know I say that Larva always knows best, but I'm gonna question his choices here. It's fine. See, like, if this push had come a little bit sooner, like, just imagine all of his forces had been here. Like, that would have been crushed super easily. Flash's mining was a little bit interrupted, but he's still got those high grounds and he's moving in it back, so it's really not a big deal for him to lose a couple of SCVs at this point in time. Had that group moved into the bottom left-hand corner instead, I think they probably could have done a lot more massive damage, because if you can take control over that high ground, it makes it so much more difficult for the Terran to take the low ground, and then you severely slow down their economy. But just attacking straight into that 6 o'clock expansion, a little bit questionable to me. And there's so many siege tanks. This is what I'm talking about. You don't need to push into the natural ever against these siege tanks. You know there's going to be a ton of siege tanks in the natural, so you just push non-stop into the 3rd, 4th, or sorry, I guess the 5th, 6th bases of the Terran player on this bottom right-hand corner. So a little bit surprising. He wasn't expecting that snipe. Oh. It looks like Flash is actually sticking to the SK Terran, kind of, and just adding on the tanks. So this is actually a very different style than the standard mech that we've seen. Standard mech would normally just lift off all the barracks and go straight into factories, but looks like Flash is still continuing to produce out of those barracks. He's still making tons of bio. me just check the progress on this video. Holy crap, there's so much time left still. This game is super long, by the way, guys. This game is going to go on forever. Doing a good job sniping a couple more of those vessels. Like I keep saying, that it's very important to thin out the vessel count. I'm really surprised that Larva hasn't been going into the Overlord drops yet. This is really sloppy from him, honestly. I think he's going to be able to get into this mineral line, which is annoying. But not going to do any real damage. At this point, I would say normally that the game is going highly in favor of the Terran. And unless Larva does something huge, like he really is going to get absolutely wrecked. This is a pretty good start, picking off a lot of tanks there with just Ling Ultra. It's very cost efficient with a Zerg player. But he really needs to start making much bigger plays if he wants to stay in this game. These Lings should be able to clean this up without much of a problem at all. And start to push this back, but so much stuff. Good plays coming out. So that's very nice to see. He's trying to establish this base over in the 9 o'clock position, but it's quite difficult, especially with Flash slow pushing across the map with these tanks. Now, I see that Larva's trying to soak up some of that damage, soak up some of that splash onto the bio, that maneuver, but that was honestly a very horribly cost inefficient trade for him. And the problem that I worry about in this particular matchup, and especially in these split map scenarios, is what happens when you start making inefficient trades like that is eventually you will run out of money. Eventually it will become a problem. So this has to do a ton of damage, this attack right here. Good stuff so far, and even with the spread of these tanks, they actually are getting quite picked off. Doesn't seem like Flash has enough on the ground to deal with these gap closing units. Doesn't have enough Marines, doesn't have enough Vultures to deal with it. So that's actually a huge win for Larva, and that's really a breath of fresh air that gets him back into this game so he can actually deal with this. He's picking off even more tanks. Overall, this is going really well for him. Flash playing this kind of experimental style, and I'm a little bit curious about what his in-game goal is here with this strange tank line. Good play onto those science vessels. Looks like he's going to be putting a couple more Sunkens in that Logran expansion to deal with the Vulture-S that's going to come in a little bit later. Maybe I'll put up one Spore just to deal with any sort of eraser trick shenaniganry. But he does have pretty well established, and at some point, this is where you get into the very late portions of the game, where you have to question, like, should I be doing drops into the Terran's main base? Do I need to get some queens to start sniping those tanks? Am I actually going to be able to kill these tanks if I don't have queens? And it's a bit interesting to think about, but he's slowly breaking this base. And this is what I was talking about earlier. You do this against the tanks, and it's much harder to reinforce because tanks are such immobile units. And now that he's cut in here, it's very easy for him to actually go attack this 6 o'clock base, which is what it appears he is aiming for with this next attack. So this is a cut-in. This basically, you cut off the resources from the production, and it makes it much easier to actually pick off everything else. But very nicely done. He stops mining at 2 bases, and this is going to allow him a chance to get ahead in the economy. He scouted this base in the 3 o'clock position from Flash, and he's probably going to be wanting to take that out pretty soon with his next group of reinforcements. But continuing to lay waste to this bottom right hand corner base while the rest of his units are being cleaned up by the forces in the 6 o'clock base. And we do finally see the full mech switch, so Flash is fully invested in this. I haven't seen the upgrades, but if the upgrades are at least +2 attack on those tanks, it becomes so brutally difficult to deal with them. It looks like he's still making Marines as well. Still making bio. It's actually insane how late Flash has stuck to this Bioforce into the late game. You never see this out of a Terran player, so it's very interesting to see how he's managing to make this work. At 3 o'clock, base is going to be picked off, and Terran is probably going to try to reestablish that. But the nice thing about that is it's pressure on the other side of the map. Now Larva knows that he can put pressure on the other side of the map. I really want to see some drops coming in. I'm really annoyed that there haven't been more drops as of yet, because I feel like he could do a lot more with a couple of drops just coming in on top of these tanks. Wow, that was incredible targeting by Flash there, just to target down the Defiler before he could get in range to put down the Dark Swarm. And this is pretty much held for now. Larva's just going to continue to macro and kind of push down one side, then push down the other. But this is what I'm talking about. This is the point in the game where if you continue to do this sort of shenaniganry, you will eventually become very cost inefficient. He's doing a very good job of soaking up the splash onto the other tanks as well. So he's doing a lot of work in that respect. But eventually this will peter out. The tank count will get too big, and he'll have to move into something different because this isn't going to work forever. Another force of Flash getting massacred as it's moving across the map. A little bit unfortunate for Flash, but you see he's always leading it back into this, back over to this ramp where he's going to be able to unite with the rest of his tanks and push it back. So it's really not a big deal for Flash to lose a couple of Marines right now. He's still being pretty damn cost effective with his units. I would like to see him switch all the way into the mech though. I feel like Vultures are far more cost efficient than the Spio, and it's a little questionable to be continuing to make this many Marines this late in the game. Again, the target fire on the Defiler, really good stuff. And finally we see the drops come in. It's about friggin' time. This is so much easier to do with drop play than it is to just run units down each side of the map over and over and over. Spawn more Overlords, yo. Only one missile turret is in place, so it's gonna be very easy to get on this high ground, get on top of these tanks. He did lose one of his Overlords, which is a bit unfortunate. But being able to get directly on top of these tanks and wipe them out is going to give him control of this high ground. It's going to be so much easier for him to clean up this force. And he's killing the reinforcements from Flash as well. So Flash isn't going to be able to get over there. And this whole base is turning complete chaos. Both of the mineral lines are under attack, so he's probably going to have to lift those CCs up, and he's probably going to lose so many SCVs. And again, this is a big turning point for Larva. He's found an opening into Flash's bases, and he's going to be able to actually start moving ahead. Good plague over there. That's going to make it much easier. And there's the GG. Whew. That is an epic game. I was wrong. The Queens aren't in this game. Apparently they were in the next game. Oh gosh, you can tell he is exhausted. That's going to be it for this game. We're gonna go ahead and do a video of the next game as well. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe down below. You can also follow me on Twitter at esportsjohn, and I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Later.